Okay, so our last lesson is going to be on the volume and surface area of spheres. A sphere is just a fancy word for a ball, right? It's just a circle that's three-dimensional. And we are going to do the volume, and we are also going to do the surface area. So we're going to look at both of those things. Here's our formulas to look at here. The volume of a sphere, let's pay attention carefully. Our volume is 4. 4 is part of the formula, so that 4 is always going to be there. Pi, we know pi is 3.14, so we know we're going to have 4 always. We're going to have 3.14, we're going to use that for pi. Our radius, of course, is r, but notice our radius is cubed this time. So we're going to have the radius cubed, not squared, divided by 3. Okay, so we just have to be very careful. A lot of times, what kids forget is they try to square the radius instead of cubing it. The other mistake I see kids make is they accidentally forget to divide by 3. So for volume, we are cubing the radius, multiplying by 4, dividing by 3. So just make sure you're using that formula correctly, okay? And then the formula for surface area is a little bit simpler. We have 4. Again, 4 is just part of our formula. Pi, we're going to use our 3.14 again. And this time, again, notice the radius is squared, not cubed. So we're going to have to keep those two things straight in our minds when we're doing this. And we're just going to look at 2 examples, one where a radius is given and one where a diameter is given. And just practice, making sure we know how to correctly put it in our calculator, because there are a couple of tricks to remember with that. So our volume, okay, first thing, the only variable that we don't know in this formula is the radius. And we know the radius in this case is 2. So let's just go ahead and do our substitutions here. So we're going to have 4, because that's part of our formula, times 3.14 times radius, which is 2, cubed, again, don't forget to cube your radius, divided by 3. When you go to use your calculator, you can put everything in here directly like this, but just be careful, because when you use your calculator, you would type in 4, actually, you would probably want to just use your multiplication symbol. So let's do that. 4 times 3.14 times 2, you'll use your little caret to the third. Make sure you arrow out of your exponent before you multiply, or excuse me, I'm not going to multiply, before you divide by 3. Okay, so just make sure, a lot of times kids make the mistake when they use the caret button here, that they get the 3 up in the exponent and then they put divide by 3 and you're still up in the exponent. So you just have to be a little bit careful with that. So just make sure you're putting it in correctly, and if you did, practice it in your calculator right now. Your volume should be 33.5 inches cubed. So you're going to have 4 times 3.14 times 2 cubed, arrow out of the cube, and then divide by 3. Surface area, again, we're just going to have our formula here. 4, that's part of the formula, times pi, which is 3.14, times our radius, which is 2 squared. And when we put that into our calculator, we get 50.24 inches squared. If it asked us to round to the nearest tenth, we would have 50.2. Okay. All right, then the only difference here between this one and this first one is this gives us a diameter, which means we need to remember that the formula calls for a radius, and the radius is just half the diameter. So when we go to use our formula, we are going to have 4, because that's part of the formula, times 3.14, times our radius cubed, which is 5 cubed, divided by 3. Again, just being very careful when you use that cubed button that you arrow out of it before you divide by 3. And if you do it correctly, you should end up at 523.3 millimeters cubed. And then for our surface area, 4 is part of it, pi is part of it, and our radius squared is just 5 squared. So when we multiply 4 times 3.14 times 5 squared, we should get 314 millimeters squared. Okay, so just be aware, making sure that really the only variable you need when you're talking about a sphere is the radius. So just make sure you're using the right numbers and not forgetting to cube the volume and square the surface area. Good luck.